Welcome to Muslim Apologetics Australia. In this video, I'm going to show you when you're debating a Christian, the easiest method to counter their arguments when you're discussing and debating the topic whether Jesus is God. As you know, oftentimes when the Muslim brings up claims against Jesus, showing that Jesus is not divine and not God, like such as when he was feeling sick or he was sleepy, weary, whether he was tired, whether he didn't know the last hour, a Christian will always say, oh no, that's not the divine nature of Jesus. That was just the human nature of Jesus. So notice the Christian has got it all played out very well for him. But I'm going to teach you that the bat he's using to beat up the Muslim with this argument is actually made out of sponge, because the same argument can be used forcefully against a Christian assertion. You know, as often as they bring up that claim Jesus is fully God and fully man, that assertion can be used against them. In fact, they will always claim that Jesus had a perfect nature in the sense that it was unable to commit a sin. Now ask the question to a Christian and watch how he traps himself. Ask him the question whether he believes that Jesus committed a sin. All Christians that I've debated have unanimously agreed and said that Jesus was unable to commit a sin. I then asked them a further deeper question, and I said, in which nature was Jesus too perfect not to commit a sin? Was it the human nature or the divine nature? Aha, you see, this is the most frustrating question for the Christian now, because he has trapped himself. When he's made a distinction between the two, then we can use that same argument and logic and reasoning back at them. That is, if Jesus was too perfect to commit a sin even through his human nature, then that means the human nature is co-equal with his godly nature. I mean, you can't have it both ways. You can't say, oh, there's two different natures. One's a godly nature and the other is human nature, when there is a contradiction in the attributes of Jesus. When it comes to him, for example, not knowing the hour, you say, oh, look, it was his human side, it was his deficient side, it was his unperfect side that didn't know the hour. It wasn't the godly side. So then you need to be consistent and accept that Jesus was not pure in his human nature, thus it was only the divine nature that was not able to commit a sin. But the human nature, you have to accept, was full of sin. Maybe that's why he was crucified, because he took upon all the sins of the world and put it on himself, and he paid the ultimate price. That could be an explanation. And if you cannot accept that, and I know you can't accept that because you as a Christian try to prove that Jesus is God because he never committed a sin, but then that raises the general question and the striking question, then that would ought to me that Jesus was sinless both in his human nature and his divine nature. And if you accept such a position, then they are co-equal in even their natures, because they're both perfect. The godly nature is perfect and the human nature is perfect. It's so perfect that it can't sin. But it raises a contradiction now, because we know that the human nature of Jesus got tired, he felt hungry. I mean, these aren't the attributes of God. God is self-sufficient. Jesus got killed, he died. Christians say, oh, but that was the human nature. But then again, you say the human nature is perfect. So which one is it? It's like a double-edged sword, yeah? So, I mean, I'm just using your logic and your argument against you and showing the fallacy of when you claim that, oh, it was just a human nature to get out of the question, right? When a Muslim says Jesus is not God, he didn't know the hour, you say, well, that was a human nature. Well, then the same very human nature of Jesus felt hungry. He got killed. That was his human nature. So that actually contradicts him being God. So the next time a Christian uses the argument Jesus is God because he didn't sin, therefore he's God, well, you're going to have to accept that the human nature is also divine. You have to. There's no other way out of it, because only the human nature, if it was divine, then it would be able to resist sin, right, throughout his whole life. So it's only by the divine nature that he could resist such an action. So if he did do such an action like that and lived a complete life without sin, that proves it's divine. And if it does prove it's divine, then you're going to have to accept the human nature that also has flaws, which means he didn't know of the hour he was killed. So at the end of the day, in conclusion, if you want to accept the theory that Jesus did not sin, therefore he is God, then you're going to have to accept your God for also being stupid because he didn't know the hour. You're also going to accept that your God was weak because he was killed. So you're going to have to accept your God being such a person, a stupid God, basically a stupid God that can be killed, but at the same time he's omnipresent. You know, he can resurrect, he can come from the dead, but you need to accept that type of God. Are you now going to accept that type of God, that a stupid God that could be intelligent and dumb at the same time? I mean, you can't have it both ways. So think about that, Christians. Think deeply about your argument when you raise a question regarding Jesus being sinless, therefore he's God.